Let's start today's show by keeping a theme going, quite by accident. I research a variety of players for upcoming episodes and work on a few stories at a time. Sometimes I come across a date and I say, hey, that's coming up soon. So I drop the other stories and focus in on that one and try to crank it out without omitting too much info in my haste to get out a time sensitive show. This show I didn't have to rush. The player's bio is real short. So on with the show. I've noticed this real fancy signature in my dad's autograph book for a while now. That page is next to a bunch of Oregon State basketball players. I assumed it was a coach because of the old-time signature. My pop has quite a few coaches' autographs, and all of them are real fancy. So on today's episode of On This Day, it's a birthday party for an old-timer who was born on this day, February 28, 1882, in New Jersey. But before we go to the party, we'll head on over to San Francisco and talk about the so-called third major league, the Pacific Coast League, founded in 1903. And it was in 1905 when the San Francisco Seals set a professional baseball record by playing 230 games. That season started March 30th and ended a week before Christmas. The Pacific Coast League would always have the longest schedule, with some clubs playing more than 200 games a season, right up until the end of the 1950s. Reason being, you guessed it, the nice weather up and down the West Coast, especially year-round down in LA. Players and coaches, as well as their families, loved the Pacific Coast League. First of all, you play almost all of your games in California, which means you don't have to deal with the heat and humidity like they do in other parts of the U.S. come summertime. Another thing everybody liked about the long season was the money. Longer season means more paychecks. Some PCL teams, like the Seals, paid the players monthly and had top-notch facilities and trainers. The league also had some of the best coaches and managers in baseball history. Some teams would travel by plane and stay in first-class hotels, and overall, if you played in the PCL, in many cases you were taken care of better than some of the big league teams. That's why so many players like to stay in the PCL, as opposed to playing ball away from home, out on the East Coast in the majors, for what might be just a few weeks or, if you're good enough and lucky enough, a few months. In the PCL, players could get comfortable with the team and its city and stay with that club off and on for years. Okay, back over to New Jersey for the man of the moment's birthday party. Come on in, here's a pointy party hat and a little noisy horn to blow on. We'll be cutting the cake in a few minutes, so let's go. Edward Wickham Griffin, nickname Ed, pitcher, MLB debut. Ed never made one. He was 26 years old before he played in his first pro game. But he does have a couple of real nice baseball cards, which I will tell you about in a minute. Put on your pointy hat or no cake and ice cream. Didn't find much personal info on Ed except for his birthplace and where he lived in his later years. I know he started playing pro ball in the spring of 1908 with the Fort Worth Panthers of the AA Texas League. Since 1888, the Panthers were one of the best teams in that league, until the club's demise in 1931. And it sounds weird saying it now, especially with the state of our borders in this country, but that Texas League, they had to suspend play because of the war. Which war? The Spanish-American War in 1898. I only found one of Ed's teammates from that 1908 Panther roster that played the majors. His name was Farmer Ray. He was a pitcher for the 1910 St. Louis Browns and has a couple of cards in their uniform. As for Ed Griffin, he went 23-9 in 1908 pitching with the Panthers, but was traded partway through the season to the San Francisco Seals, and in 1909 as a Seals pitcher, he started 21 games, going 12-10, and would have his best season as a hitter, batting .281. So the Seals would turn him into an outfielder for the 1910 season, but he was optioned in June to a team in a brand new league called the California San Joaquin Valley League, Class D. They would have their inaugural opening day in 1910 and folded in July of 1911. Just for laughs and caps, here are the cities and towns in that league that have funny names and probably cool ball caps. Ed Griffin, he played for the Bakersfield Drillers. Then you got the Porterville Orange Pickers, the Hanford Braves, the Tulare Merchants, the Lemoore Cubs. The city of Visalia would have two teams. They had the Pirates and the Colts. Same for the town of Coalinga. They had the Savages and the Tigers. During Ed Griffin's short pitching career that ended in 1911, and in total consisted of 72 games. He had 39 wins and 25 losses with a 2.52 ERA. That includes when he pitched for the Great Falls Electrics of the Union Association League. Now, if I was filming this episode at my parents' house, you would have been looking at Ed's autograph while I was talking. And then at this point, I'd show a steady, nice close-up shot that is well lit of Ed's 2 beautiful art cards. But I don't own them. I could photo swipe images off the web. Don't know how. It's good for your imagination to listen to me and use that 10% of your melon for a minute while I tell you about Ed's cards. Put your party hat back on. It's only going to be a minute. As everybody clicks off because nobody wants to use their imagination while I talk about an old-timey player that nobody's heard of from the turn of the century. Which one? The 19th century? That's a good promo for my show. This is my 3rd show on a real old-timey player. Ty Cobb and Walter Mayles were the first ones. And it's my first time really looking into the history of turn-of-the-century cards. Ed Griffin has a 1909 Oback cigarette card. Some of these cards were hand-cut at the factory and were graded authentic, even though they are not trimmed. In that 1909 card, Ed is pictured outside. It's a 3/4 body shot of him, and he appears to be casually tossing the ball back to somebody as if he's warming up. That old-time glove is great. Half the background is green grass, the rest is an early evening light yellow sunset. Ed is wearing the Seals whites with light blue pinstripes, and you see the Seals logo on his flannel jersey, and underneath that flannel is a thick, long-sleeve shirt. To complete the ensemble, he has a wide belt that is light blue and matches the pinstripes, and really ties it all together. I've never seen that color blue on their uniforms before. All the photos are black and white. Ed Griffin also has a 1910 T212 card. These cards are the West Coast version of T206s. His card is known as black cap, red background. Perfect description. Looks like an indoor portrait setting. You can tell he's standing, yet all you see is his upper body. He's looking away and wearing that thick warm-up sweaters that they used to wear. He's holding his glove and a ball up to his chest. You see a glimpse of the Seals pinstripes underneath that warm-up sweater that's buttoned almost all the way up to the top. I'm not sure when Mr. Griffin signed the autograph book. If it wasn't late summer of 1956, then I'd say it was 1955 Seals versus the Cleveland Indians game. I have yet to figure out the exact date of that game. I'd say late March or early April. It was probably an exhibition game, sometime just before MLB opening day. Dad has over a dozen pages back-to-back in his autograph book from that time frame, with players from both teams and a few celebrities exclusively on those pages. This is probably when Pop got autographs from Ty Cobb, Frank Albert, Walter Mayles, Rube Johnson, and Emmett Ashford, the first black umpire in MLB, and was probably behind the plate that day. This is a few years before MLB's expansion to the West Coast, so it makes sense that when the Indians make a rare appearance in San Francisco that all the celebrities would come out to watch. Hey, thanks for coming over to the birthday party and keeping your pointy hat on while I talked. Cake and ice cream is coming up. So now, I'll wrap up Ed Griffin's birthday show. Wish I had more info on him and knew where my dad got his signature. I'll have to ask him. All I know about Ed was in his later years, he was living on Lighthouse Street in Pacific Grove, California, which you are looking at right now. It's a little hazy, a little foggy. It's there on the right. He was a private gardener for homes in the Pebble Beach, Carmel area. That's just on the other side of those mountains, which you really can't see. Yeah, you can kind of see him. He was 77 when he died at his home in 1959. While a player like Ed Griffin is not known by fans today, they shouldn't feel bad because even back in 1909, if you lived anywhere but the West Coast, you wouldn't have known who he was either. On this day,